Okay, so now we're live. And we're going to wait a little bit, giving people the chance to log in. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
We're waiting, well, I think less than a minute or so. So come on in, all of you. Hope you're all having a good day, or you had a good day, depending on where you are. Okay. Let's see. Okay, couple more seconds. Okay. So you're all set, Alex?
Yeah, I was just drinking a bit of water.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay, let's get started. Hello, everyone. And once again, welcome to today Gala's webinar. My name is Isabella Massardo. I'm Gala's content strategist. And today we have a webinar about the ways that localization can contribute to entrepreneurship. And our speaker today is Alex Ignjatovic. She's ready. You can see her on your screen. And so welcome, Alex. And she's Globalization Enablement Manager at Shopify, and she's just been promoted, so congratulations. Before we start, just a few housekeeping items. You have all been muted to cut down on noise. You can use the chat button on your control panel. You can chat with the other attendees, you can chat with me or the presenter. At any time during the webinar, you can submit your questions to Alex, and you can do that by using the Q&A box at the bottom of the control panel. And we'll try to take as many questions as we can during the QA session, which will be at the end of Alex's presentation. We will be recording this webinar, and I'll share the link in a follow-up email with you after the event. And in any case, we will post the recording on the Gala website on Monday at the latest. So, Alex, I'm going to leave the floor to you.
Thanks, Isabella. Yeah, thanks, Isabella and the Gala team for inviting me to present. I'm really happy to be here. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, maybe good evening for some of you. My name is Alex. Like Isabella said, I'm a Globalization Enablement Manager at Shopify. A bit of background about me. So I'm originally from Paris in France. Currently, my home is Toronto in Canada. I've spent the last decade moving around the world. I had the chance to live in Europe and Asia, and now I've settled in North America. And my passion for languages, cultures, and traveling obviously runs deep. I like to joke that I'm an immigrant. My parents were immigrants. Even my dog's an immigrant. Like, he was rescued from Texas and recently brought to Canada. He's also trilingual. He responds to commands in 3 languages. So I've been really deeply immersed in everything, languages, cultures, for all my life. I've been at Shopify for the past 4 years in different roles, but always touching localization. And currently I'm focusing on implementing new tooling to our localization tech stack. And I also run global initiatives to support Shopify's growth team. Enough about me, a bit about Shopify to get us started. So we're a Canadian company. We were founded in Ottawa in 2006. So we just turned 15 a few weeks ago. That makes us a teenager. Definitely feels that way sometimes working there. We are a leading global commerce company. We power over 1.7 million merchants in over 175 countries. They use our platform and our tools in over 20 languages to set up, run, and grow retail businesses of any size across multiple sales channels. So we have merchants of all sizes, whether they're brick and mortar stores looking to get an online channel, or big direct to consumer brands, casual sellers looking for extra income. We really serve everyone. We have merchants, like I said, in 175 countries, but our partner ecosystem is also important and growing globally. So partners they fall into three categories. We have agencies who build stores for our merchants. They're present around the world and they're nurtured by our in-country partner teams and business development teams. We have theme developers who build themes that merchants can use for their stores. So our merchants don't need to know how to code to set up an online store, where they can just go to the Shopify theme store and either use one of our free themes or download and pay for one. And finally, we have app developers who take our product and enhance it, build upon it, and all of their apps are available in the Shopify App Store. So we're growing globally. Obviously, today, a large part of our growth is driven by international markets. Our non-English speaking merchants are growing, especially as we are starting to achieve product market fit in new markets following our initial international investments. So we're in a high growth phase for the company as a whole, but definitely for the localization team also as a consequence. With more merchants also comes more buyers. You can see the growth trajectory of people who've bought from a Shopify store throughout the years. Obviously, big bump in 2020. And you may or may not be aware of it, but you've probably purchased something from a Shopify store at some point. If you buy things online, chances are you've bought from one of our 1.7 million merchants. So that's enough about Shopify. Obviously, there's a lot to say about the company in general. It's fascinating. I could talk about it for hours, but what you've signed up for here today is to hear about how we do localization. So let's shift gears. What I'll cover today is I'll start with a brief history of localization at Shopify and our current setup. Then we'll move on to how we handle content, how we produce impactful multilingual content that contributes to international growth with that emphasis on performance. And we'll end with how we position ourselves as a strategic partner and an enabler of international growth within the company. So without further ado, a brief history of localization at Shopify. We're fairly new, but we're mighty. So localization at Shopify was actually born out of an experiment in 2016 that was conducted by our growth team at the time. We had an English blog at the time that was very successful, and we started noticing that we were getting traffic on that blog from non-English speaking countries. And so our SEO team at that time decided to hire an agency to translate that blog into Spanish, see what happens. Obviously, the translation into Spanish led to top of funnel growth. It validated that this was a good idea. And so the company decided to proceed further. That's also when they realized that they weren't going to scale well without in-house content experts to manage those programs. And so they decided to hire in-house content managers for a few languages. At that time, it was French, German, Spanish, Italian, and Brazilian Portuguese. That's how I got there. By the way, I used to manage our French blog. So our blogs proved to be very, very successful in bringing leads in our markets. But obviously, back then, we were really far from having product market fit everywhere. Our customers in those non-English markets were mostly early adopters who were well-versed in programming, well-versed in English. And eventually, the company realized that it would be very difficult to retain all those leads that we were bringing in through the blogs unless they made significant investments in product market fit. And yeah, at that time, our team of content managers and a few business development and partnerships colleagues who were in country were the only representatives of international markets within Shopify. So as you can imagine, we did a lot of explaining, advocating, evangelizing. And eventually, we got to 2018, which is when our international product line was born. That team, that department was tasked with investing in our product market fit, building in-country teams and partnerships in country. And the way that our team contributed to that investment was to make our product, so the Shopify admin, available in more languages. So in May of 2018, so just a bit over 3 years ago, we launched the Shopify admin and our help documentation in 6 languages. So French, German, Spanish, Italian, Brazilian, Portuguese, and Japanese. So 3 years later, where are we at? Our website, which we call our brochure, is available today in 14 languages. So we've added onto that, and the full list is we have French, German, Spanish, Italian, Brazilian, Portuguese, Danish, Dutch, Swedish, simplified Chinese, traditional Chinese for Hong Kong, traditional Chinese for Taiwan, Vietnamese, and Korean. We also have blogs and other free educational tools for merchants that are available in a subset of those languages. And then on the product side, our Shopify admin, which is a product, and our help documentation is available in the same languages that I already mentioned, plus a few more, which is Czech, Finnish, Norwegian, Polish, Portuguese for Portugal, Thai, and Turkish. So as you can see, 3 years, we've grown the list of languages quickly, especially early on the product side. And that's, you know, the company trusted us very early on, us and other teams touching localization, to take risks and make big bets, which was great. And I would argue that we wouldn't have done as well today had we not taken some of those risks, and some of them paying off. But you know, flying the rocket ship while you build it is typical Shopify. When you do things in a fast, scrappy way, not everything's perfect. The company as a whole didn't have a solid international expansion plan before we actually went into it. And that has led us to having to reverse certain decisions, even sunset a couple of languages along the way. So nowadays, you know, we've learned from our mistakes. We're less in a rush to launch new languages. We evaluate the opportunities carefully and we make data-informed decisions. So we're in a much better place. That's it for history. Let's look at organizationally how we're structured. So we have many teams at Shopify that touch localization. We've gone through a few different configurations, but today we are in a decentralized model where we have a team handling product translation, so everything that's in our Shopify admin. Another team that's focusing on support, which is online help, but also like our merchant experience in other markets when they contact support. So a big part of our Shopify workforce is made of support advisors. I know many companies choose to outsource this, but Shopify believed early on that it should be handled mostly in-house. So my colleagues from the support localization team, they work very closely with our teams of multilingual support advisors, and they identify what the needs of our merchants are in markets where we operate. So that gives us great insights into our international merchants experience and what their pain points are and where we should be investing. That team also looks into how we can improve the tooling that our multilingual support staff is using, what type of support we offer in certain markets, and all of that good stuff. And then lastly, the international content and localization team, which is the team I'm on, which I will mostly focus on later on in this presentation. So it's different departments, decentralized, but strong collaboration in many ways between our teams. We share a vendor, we share some resources, tools, best practices, obviously, and even some projects that we work on together. So like I mentioned, focusing on how my team operates within growth. So I mentioned that, you know, we started in growth initially as an experiment. We did a short stint in the international product line, and now we've come full circle and we're back under growth. And being part of a growth department, it puts us in a really good place to collaborate with performance marketing teams such as SEO, which is a crucial partner of our team, other teams like paid search, paid social. And so, and because our team grew up under the content marketing team, we naturally built ties with our other colleagues from marketing, which has made that collaboration even easier. So zooming in, so this is what the content and localization team looks like today. We have two main streams. On the one side, we have content marketing, and on the other side, localization, which is the team that I'm part of. So on the content marketing side, our content marketing managers are tasked with growing the number of customers in their markets through content. Their main acquisition channel is the blog, but they also manage other channels like organic social and other channels. And they're responsible also for making decisions about the languages they manage. So they approve the style guide and the glossary. We have content managers for all our main international markets, and they have their own teams of freelance translators and copywriters that helps them localize or create content from scratch for their market. On the localization side, we handle all translation and localization initiatives for our websites, email marketing, corporate initiatives, educational content, legal content, ad copy, online events, social content, videos, you name it. Anything that's not product or support, we do. And we work with a combination of an LSP and freelance translators, as well as language specialists that we manage directly. And our language specialists are responsible for reviewing all of our content. Because we deal with marketing content, which has its own requirements, it needs to be engaging, it needs to resonate, besides ensuring that it's grammatically correct and free of mistakes like typos, which is a given. Those teams ensure that it's engaging and that it works well in those markets. So let's spend some time on content. So a lot of us, like I said, on the localization team, started at Shopify directly in charge of content in our own language. So we have deep context and opinions around the type of content that we handle. And so we have a tiered localization model. That means that the most impactful content for us gets the most attention and investment. That's one of the good things actually about being part of a growth team is, the focus is always on impact. And so we were able to invest in the right things. The types and ultimate objectives of the content will determine the type of localization. So for us, translation is just one of the options we have, but we're also leaning heavily on copywriting when needed. Again, the content that we produce is meant to encourage the user to make a decision. So it needs to resonate and it needs to appeal to emotion. And so that requires more, finesse than straight translation. And so we always right-size the investment to the opportunity. For example, we know that machine translation can be cheaper, can be faster. We do use it on help content at Shopify. But it doesn't move the needle for us on the marketing side. So we don't use it on marketing content. We prefer to invest in a process that is more costly, both in terms of time and people. But for us, it's worth it in the end. And then multiple approaches to localization, always determined by the needs of the market. We're not dictated by a single approach. We have guidelines, obviously, but they're not set in stone. As many other things at Shopify, actually. We don't have overly defined templates for our international websites. And if you look at them, you'll see that there are different levels of localization based on each market. Some markets, for example, will feature local merchants above the fold because it's important in those markets for people to see people who look like them. In others, we showcase our product because people need to see the product before they buy it. In other markets, having trust seals is important because we need to show that we are compliant in those markets. And all of those initiatives are like, again, not set in stone. It's something we're constantly testing and refining. And it doesn't mean that because we decided to feature a merchant on one of our homepages, we'll stick to it forever. We conduct A/B tests and reconsider constantly with research as well. So we have an international content marketing program with localized content strategies for each market. And this has, it's been great because it's helped us to stay aligned with regional teams better. I know that some companies struggle with this alignment with regional teams because often regional teams feel like the content comes from HQ and doesn't resonate with their markets. It's too North American focused. And so our regional teams, they're really not distracted by our work in a negative way, because we already have a local focus as part of our mandate, and Shopify has enabled us to be resourced properly for this model. So our content managers, they are part of our international content and localization team, but they're also embedded in their own regional teams. Some are based in Canada because that's where the team was started, but now we're hiring all of them in country. And they're working with their in-country counterparts, like I mentioned, partner managers and other business developers. So our content decisions are informed by a laser focus on performance and impact. We are working very closely with the SEO team. Obviously, there's no point in publishing content if people can't find it. So we lean on the SEO team to provide us with keyword research and optimizations for our markets. And I think that's one of the reasons why our blog funnels are so successful. Sorry. And so any content that we have that goes online goes through a workflow that starts with keyword research for SEO. And that's whether it's on our website, our blogs, or our free tools, we want to ensure that people can find it. And that collaboration is also a great way to identify opportunities for topics that we haven't covered yet, things that people are looking for in those markets. And our content managers are also trained to do basic keyword research so they can work independently without relying always on the SEO team. But one great example of this collaboration is recently, I think last year in Germany, our content manager and SEO manager identified that people in Germany were searching for a term that was impressum, loosely translates as imprint. It's a legal requirement in Germany for websites to have a mention. Think of it as credits of who made the website. And so there was clearly interest and a gap to fill in the market. So the first step for that team was to test the opportunity. So they went to our paid search team and put out some paid ads to see if there was interest. And yes, there was interest. So our German content manager started publishing content on the blog to provide advice to merchants. And then eventually it even went as far as collaborating with our product teams to make a business case and create an impressum generator that anyone can use for free as part of our offering of free tools, whether or not they're a Shopify merchant. So that's a really cool example, I think, of surfacing in-country specific opportunities that we wouldn't have identified if we were just translating from English. And so our content managers are always keeping a close eye on content performance, and they also surface opportunities to each other. And obviously, I'm talking about performance here. There is a strong focus on performance, but we're also flexible and publish content such as corporate announcements that we have to do. They won't always rank, but they're useful for brand awareness, and so our PR team can use them to drive their own initiatives in markets. Yeah, finally, I want to spend some time on English. So we don't necessarily use English content as a source. We don't inherit it by default and just translate it. We're thoughtful about what we take from the North American market or other markets and make it global. And we always keep in mind what will resonate with the audience. We've had also initiatives, and that happens a lot in European markets, where content is generated, let's say in Spanish, and then gets translated to the rest of the European markets, German to Italian. There's a lot of cross pollination of content, and European markets tend to resonate with the same success stories. You have common themes like European Union regulation, like GDPR compliance, and our features are usually Shopify features are usually available across all European markets. So that's an easy way to surface content that doesn't come from English and HQ. So I mentioned audience before, and I do want to spend some time on this. I don't think you can produce content that resonates with the audience and ultimately drive results for the company if you don't understand what the needs of your audience are. So one thing that Shopify does is encourage all of its employees to interact with merchants. We call it being close to the front lines. As part of onboarding, we can spend some time shadowing our support advisors and even answer support tickets ourselves with some training from them. And it's a really good experience to interact with merchants and hear what their issues are firsthand. And I said, it's part of onboarding, but everyone, can regularly go through it with time. And so our team of content managers also has really close ties with merchants. They interview them to showcase them in success stories or case studies on the blog. And that means that, when we're talking to them, we hear from them directly what the good is, what their successes are, and also what their pain points are. So we're constantly, aware of those. We also have an annual merchant survey that is conducted by our market research team. And that gives us great insights. And it's a way to take a pulse on how things are going for merchants. And that's actually another example of great cross-team collaboration, because the market insights team comes to us to get translations for the actual survey, which they run in our priority markets, but then also comes back to us with insights that we can use then to inform our content strategy. And they're usually available if we need to do deep dives, establish user personas, segmentations, and that stuff. Our support staff also keeps a list of merchant frustrations, and that we use that to identify gaps that we can fill through content. Most recently, there's a new rule in the European Union on value-added tax, which is going into effect on July 1st. Our merchant support advisors realized that there was an increase in tickets from people who were worried about it. And so they contacted our content managers, and now we have blog posts with advice on what to do when you sell across EU country borders, or if you're exporting goods to buyers in the European Union. So that's an easy way to collaborate with other teams and ultimately help Shopify. And so that's one half. It's like providing information that we know our users need, and that's obviously part of our job. But there's also interesting situations where we can be in a position to provide something that our audience doesn't yet know that they need. And a great example of that is how we've handled Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So BFCM, obviously really big for Shopify, has always been the biggest selling season for our North American merchants. When our team was formed and BFCM came, there was a lot of thinking about how to approach it internationally and how to introduce it in our markets. And we were wondering, like, should we even talk about it if it's not a thing in our countries? Knowing that it's big for Shopify, and the company will want to talk about how big it is. So we may have to do anyway a corporate announcement. We weren't even sure, like, should we translate the term Black Friday, Cyber Monday? It wasn't used in some of our markets. So that's a decision that we had to make. And you want to walk a fine line between like introducing new things to your audience, but also not being perceived as a North American company that doesn't understand the market. And we tried different strategies, balancing again those corporate requests with our knowledge of the market. And little by little, every year we see that it's catching on more and more in those markets. So I mentioned success stories. Here are some examples of stories from some of our international blogs highlighting local merchants and industry. We have a merchant from France, Germany, Japan, Italy, Brazil, and the Netherlands. So here we're really at the intersection of languages, culture, growth, and how to reclaim the word entrepreneur in many ways, and how so Shopify is committed to diversity and inclusion, and the word entrepreneur is not always perceived as very inclusive in some markets. And so how do we show people that they can be entrepreneurs too, and start a business and sell things and be very successful? So I talked about focus earlier. Focus and planning are important, but we also need to know when to pivot and throw away all of our plans. So I put thrive on change because it's one of our cultural values at Shopify. We value change. Our leadership believes that change is important and that speed is a competitive advantage. And we really got to test that value in real life when the pandemic hit us last year. We were coming out of our annual summit with big plans on how we were, like, the year was going to go and where our investments were going to be. And then we realized that there was a need. Businesses were closing. They were losing important income. People were struggling. And so our product teams sat down to rethink pretty much everything they had planned to ship. And they chose to prioritize things that would be most impactful for people who were struggling. So some examples is we had gift cards that were not available on Shopify. And so we accelerated that. Our product teams made it possible for merchants to sell gift cards. And so that was an easy way for people who wanted to support small businesses to buy a gift card and show their support. Another thing we did was put out a theme for restaurants who wanted to sell online. So restaurants were closing their doors. They needed ways to stay afloat by selling takeout or groceries. And so our team put out a simple free theme that allowed restaurants to get set up very quickly online. And so we were able to offer a lifeline to people who needed it. And we helped a bunch of them pivot online quickly. And I think this was largely possible because of that culture of change that we foster internally. And obviously, has resulted in Shopify being incredibly successful in the past year and largely leading to that massive growth that I've talked about before. So some examples of content that we spun up within a few weeks quickly to help merchants was information about government relief programs for small businesses in different countries, gift card announcements, and advice on how to make it part of your sales strategy, advice on what sales strategies you can implement immediately to have some funds. How to move your brick and mortar store online, and also things like putting our merchants and their products in the spotlight to encourage people to support them by buying from them. So I've talked about the actual work, how we go about it. The other side of the story is how to get buy-in from leadership so we can continue to do all these fun things. And we're lucky at Shopify that our leadership understands the value that we bring through localization. Like we're not in a position where we have to fight for things like budget or recognition. It hasn't always been easy, especially at the beginning when the company didn't understand translation. It's taken a while to get here. It's still a work in progress in many ways, but one thing we've proven is that we can deliver on international content, and so our team is in a good place. But still, it's not because we're in a good place that we shouldn't make efforts. And so we want to make sure that we make it easy for the rest of the company to understand what we do and the impact that we have. And one way to do this is by choosing the KPIs that we track very carefully to align with what the rest of the company and obviously senior leadership cares about. So zooming way out, Shopify is a mission-oriented company. Make commerce better for everyone is the company's overarching mission. It permeates everything we do and the decisions we make. And I like the word everyone here because it's really important for our team. We can always tie back the impact that we have and the role that we play in unlocking this mission for everyone around the world. This is from the latest Shopify investor deck. I know flywheels are all the rage at the moment, so I couldn't resist adding our own. The important point here is that international is clearly spelled out as an opportunity. Again, that's something we can use, and that's great for our localization team. So one of the things that we need to move away from is traditional localization metrics like cost per word, throughput, quality scores, on-time delivery, all of that stuff. Like it's a good indicator of how our pipeline is doing. And it's great, it's good for us to track. But for our leadership, these things are all givens. Like they assume that we manage our budget responsibly, that our translations are all good, high quality, and that there's no problem, that they resonate with our audience, that things run smoothly and on time. And so we don't impress them when we go to them with that information. They're looking at performance dashboards all day, every day. They don't have time to learn the intricacies of localization processes. And so we should be making it easy for them to connect to us and to understand our value. So instead of asking them to make the effort to understand what we do, we flip things around and make it easier, like speak their language, basically translate our localization performance. We use metrics that they look at every day and show where localization is moving the needle. Metrics that show merchant acquisition. So how many customers sign up through our localized pages? Activation, how many of them stay on the platform after their free trial has ended? And what makes them stay? How do we encourage their success and increase retention? So North Star metrics, they tend to evolve often with leadership changes, but we stay in the loop and we adapt. And so, for example, our focus used to be on leads, how many new leads we used to bring to Shopify. Now that we're more mature, we're looking at active merchants. So how many of them are successful on our platforms? And so really understanding the growth levers that we have control over and using them to speak to the performance of our content has been really important in getting buy-in from leadership. Also, making friends on the data team so that they help you pull those numbers is always good. And I say this in a joking way, but obviously all of this requires collaboration. Like we don't work in silos. We share results, we share wins. If say our paid search team puts together a campaign that requires localization, we both contributed to the success of that campaign. I wouldn't be able to set up a paid social campaign, and they wouldn't be able to do it in many languages without me. So it's really a collaboration and a shared success. So we've worked really hard to position ourselves as a strategic partner. We really don't want to just execute on requests that we get from other teams like a service. They come to us for our international expertise beyond just localization or content marketing. Things like which markets to target, how to go about it, what level of localization or customization to apply. And so we're shifting the perception where we don't want to be seen as a bottleneck, where you throw in a translation request and then you wait and you don't know what's happening to it until it's delivered. But more as enablers that come before the translation request even hits us, that sit down with other teams to discuss their objectives and what they're trying to achieve, and ultimately help them accelerate their initiatives internationally. I've mentioned a few of those teams already, but I do want to stress the cross-functional aspect of our job. Obviously, SEO is super intertwined with content. There's no content without SEO. There's no SEO without content. I won't go into details of how we're working with all these teams, because I already did in many ways. The important point is that this is a two-way street. Requests actually flow both ways. And I said it before, relationships are important, and we try to keep really good relationships with our colleagues. Ultimately, people don't want to work with you if they don't like you. And so we're trying to be seen as, the fun localization team that enables them to reach international goals. And I was reflecting as I was preparing these slides that the saying, like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Somehow we combine both at Shopify. We go fast together. And that just really speaks to how well we are organized. So we're not just providing a service to those teams. We have a seat at the table and we help them inform their strategy, like from being present at kickoff meetings to represent international, all the way to delivering the content and looking at its performance. So that's it for me. We can open it up for questions.
Thanks, Alex. Yes, I see some questions coming in. I thought it was very interesting some of the things you said about being partners with, for example, the other teams within within your company. So for localization teams that are kind of struggling to be seen as strategic partners, what would your advice be based on your experience within Shopify, for example?
Yeah, I would say, try to identify where your allies are. And a good team to start with is always SEO, because they already track those numbers. And so, again, making friends with them, seeing, what you can do together, and paid teams. Usually every company has an SEO team and a paid team if they're online. And so, like, getting closer to those teams and identifying things that you can test with them, and start small, like start with low hanging fruits. Like, we don't need like moonshots, little things to help, put yourself on the map. Is how I would go about it.
Yeah, and would that work, you think, also when you try and change, let's say, the leadership mindset and make them see that localization is worth spending on something?
I would go about it like the way we did, with, try to figure out, and it may not be what I said, that's like really, really specific to Shopify, but figure out what leadership is looking at all day, every day. Like, don't, and let's use our translation skills to, show them where we move the needle in things that they care about.
Exactly. So there's a question from Pawan, and he's asked, how does someone who is offering products to multiple markets localize exactly? I mean, can you talk a little bit more? How do you choose?
At Shopify specifically, or?
I think, I think this question has to be related to what you guys do at Shopify.
Yeah, so I am not on the product localization team. So disclaimer, this is not my area of expertise. Obviously, I work closely with them. So we have, so like, you need basic, the content needs to be, extracted and externalized, so that it can be translated, is step one. That's not something that we had done at Shopify. It wasn't like ready to be translated when we decided to translate. So our developers went through a really painful string extraction process, with a really tight deadline, because we needed to jump in and translate. So that would be number one. So again, make friends with your developers, make sure that they're well-versed in internationalization best practices, that your content is going to be translatable. And if they're not, try to show them how, how important it is, and how, having your product available in other languages is crucial.
Exactly. So evangelize localization, basically. It was interesting what you said, in a very honest way, that you guys move fast and sometimes things break.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, for example, I don't know whether you want to talk about it, if you can talk about it, about some mistakes like choosing to localize for a market and that didn't work. And maybe you can tell us, I don't know, of course, I don't want you to go into details, but maybe mention some of the mistakes that have been useful lessons, useful localization lessons for you guys.
Yeah, so something that's been, something we, and again, I said it, classic Shopify, you fly the rocket ship and figure out how to build it as you're flying it. That's the question, is like, would we have done so well if we had taken the time to figure out what countries our priorities were lying in? It's true that it's painful to have to sunset a language, but so the mistakes that we learned from is spend a bit more time figuring out where you want to expand. Like, look at data. Where are your visitors to your website coming from? Because if there's interest, they'll check your English website, and then decide if you want to, and if it's worth translating. So spend a bit more time, like ahead of time, identifying those opportunities, seeing if there's demand in the markets. Maybe it's a market that's really comfortable with English. Like some of the Nordic markets are really comfortable with English. Do you even need to translate at this point? So I think what we did is we moved too fast, and we probably translated in languages too quickly, without realizing that product market fit wasn't there, and we didn't have investment in product market fit. So that's I would say that's important.
And also, since you mentioned metrics, can you give us some example of metrics that you track?
Yeah, so on the growth side, anything that has to do with the performance of your content. So like anything from how many visitors you get to your page, sessions, leads, conversion rates. If you're dealing with email marketing, things like open rates, click-through rates, and then, you know, as you mature, like we have, we're getting into like actual customer retention and what are you doing to make your customers successful on your platform, and you know, we're in the midst of figuring out what it is that we do. We're testing a lot of things. Some of them work, some of them don't. And like what works, we try to scale it across the board to other languages too, so that more people can benefit from it. But yes, that's in a nutshell.
Sure. There's another question from Nestor, and he writes that the company he works for has content translated from many countries, but at the moment he's working by himself, designing and implementing a new localization program. And at this point, he says it feels like an experiment, just like you mentioned. And so his question is, what would be the right path to create and grow a sustainable localization team?
Yeah, I would say figure out what your audience wants and needs, what your product is offering, because localization is just one piece of a massive puzzle. There's many things involved. Like we can't control everything on the localization side either. Like we have an influence on things, but it's none of this happens in isolation. So like I would proceed like in two ways, is like really understand where the company is going, what the other teams' goals are, what they're trying to achieve. Are there investments in product market fit coming down the pipe? What kind of product is it? Does it have like issues with compliance that you have to take into account? These are also things that you can surface to those teams. They like if you provide that feedback in a positive way, they're usually like grateful, because not every product team has an awareness of how things work internationally. A lot of them only lived in one country, so they don't know what they don't know. And so it's they're usually grateful for the perspective that we bring. And then there's the customers. How who are your customers and what are they interested in? And really use the information from both the company and outside of the company to inform everything you do.
Yeah, exactly. And then one final question, because you mentioned that when you guys started, you and I know another colleague of yours, of course, you were translators, and then you grew up with the company basic and took on more responsibility, more tasks, and so on. So we at Gala have an initiative for the global talent, and one of the questions that we get asked very often is, what kind of skills do I need to develop for the future? You just imagine you just graduated, you're entering the translation market. Did you find it difficult to go from being a translator, and then did you get a chance? What skills did you have to develop? What did you have to learn to do your job? And what would you advise a young person who's about to enter the market?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like I didn't find it hard. And it's like, I find that nowadays when I have to explain like how I went, or me or some of my other colleagues went from translator to localization professionals, it's like asking a fish to tell you what water is. Like it's hard to figure out what we did sometimes. I always had like an interest like beyond translation. I ran my own translation business for a long time. And so I was exposed to things like, budgeting and project management and, how to do your taxes, all of the stuff that you have to do when you own a business. And then I think one thing that really helped us grow within the team was I didn't know anything about content marketing before joining Shopify. Everything I learned about like marketing, I learned it here. And I grabbed on to any opportunity I had to sit down with my colleagues from all walks of life. Like we're lucky that we have really talented people in the company to learn more about content marketing itself. And so that was a big one for me, like knowing that it's not just like the content that you produce, but like what it does. And being able to like learn how to interpret data reports and things like this. So that was a big part. And then everything that has to do in my current job with localization tooling. Obviously, I was a user of CAT tools and TMSs and all that. But in true Shopify style, I was tasked with overhauling our entire tech stack without having ever done it before. And you just grab onto any opportunity that you have to learn. And when you're given that responsibility, you obviously like you have like you have to deliver. You have to keep the trust of your colleagues.
Exactly.
Like there's a lot at stake. And so yeah, I drew like I spent a lot of time sitting down with developers, just learning how how code works and how localization fits into all that. And now these developers are partners of mine in improving those tools. And so yeah, really like keep an open mind and grab onto any opportunities you have to learn and improve.
Yeah, thanks. Great answer. Thank you. Let's see. I don't see any other question right now. So yeah, thank you so much, Alex. It was very interesting and it was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Another big another big thank you to all participants for joining us. When I close the webinar in a minute or so, you'll see a feedback form. And I invite you to fill it in because, as you know, your feedback is really helpful for us and it helps us refine our webinar program. So one short announcement from me. Next week, we have another webinar. At this time, it's a sponsored webinar by RWS, which means that it's going to be free for members and non-members. So you can visit our website and under the events calendar, you'll find the page. But I'll include the link to my follow-up email later today. So for now, Alex, thank you again. Hope to see you soon at another gala event. And
thanks everyone for attending and for all the great questions.
And yeah, from me is have a good day or have a good evening, depending on where you are. And hope to see you soon at another gala event. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.